All right, good. So today, what we're going to be talking about is stories are important, right? So everyone's joined a company in which it was on a really great, successful track, very exciting, really great holiday parties. And maybe you've also joined a company in your career in which it was in the decline, right? So there's an atmosphere of fear. So we'll talk a little bit about the story that you just joined, GitLab. What are we trying to do? Why are we special? And what's the journey that you joined into? Then we'll talk about the product. What do we do from a technical perspective and why do customers want to buy our stuff? We'll round out with competition and pricing and finally wrap things up. So yeah, sounds good to y'all?
Yep.
All right, sounds awesome. So does anyone know who this gentleman is in the top right?
Zion.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
tell me a little bit about Zion. Who's Zion? And yeah, tell me about Zion.
He's thought to be the next LeBron James. We'll see. He's a pretty incredible athlete so far, but a young NBA player.
Yeah. Go ahead, Hags.
Sean Kemp is what I come to mind because he needs to do some sprints. He's a little bit,
yeah.
I mean, he's a monster of an athlete, though.
Yeah.
Like unbelievable.
Huge.
Unbelievable. But yeah.
People think that he has a lot of potential.
They do. I mean, it was like yeah, the idea was potential size. Granted, in the college level, he's much larger than most, and then you hit the NBA, but he's still, huge. So he's,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think he's going to get as big as they think. I think Sean Kemp's it.
Yeah. So basically, one of my analogies is that GitLab is like Zion Williamson. In other words, we are trading at a really high multiple. We have a lot of potential. There's a lot of investor expectations on the company. And one of the big things that we're trying to do now is that we're trying to meet those expectations, just like Zion was #1 in the NBA draft, right? We're kind of interesting in the sense that we only sell one product, which is GitLab. In the last companies that you worked for, like how many products did they sell?
Oh, I mean, probably on the order of hundreds, if not thousands for mine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine was max 2. It was one product. So.
We only sell one product here. Kind of interesting. So we have a lot of potential. We're winning a lot of awards, but we still got a lot of work to do. Right now, our reputation is a little bit higher than what we've actually achieved. And what we're trying to do in the next 3 years is to become that next great player in the technology space, right? So on a financial level, we're trying to get to $1 billion in annual recurring revenue. All right, so this is just an example. Every single major analyst report, Gartner, Forrester, IDC, GitLab's top right in basically every single one. But one of the things that's really important to understand is where are we really in the market today, right? So in onboarding, because a lot of the assets that we make you read is from marketing, we kind of spin a narrative that GitLab success is inevitable, right? But we have some very real competitors. So let's actually take a look at where we are with respect to some of these other companies in the market. And one way that you can do that is you can look at job postings, right? So what I did over here is I went on a job posting site in the United States. And I looked for the number of jobs that are asking for GitLab versus our competitors. So over here, 10,000, okay. Jenkins, 40,000, so 4X we're at. And then GitHub, 2.3, like 23,000. So what does this tell you about our market position?
A lot of people want to work for these companies.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
but where are we
trying
with
to grow
to our competitors?
We're still technically, I guess, considered, three times under, give or take, or 2.5, as far as like
we're the new kid on the block,
Yeah.
right? That's really important for us to understand. We have a great and big reputation, but in the market, we still have to realize our potential. All right, so what does GitLab do? This is really important to understand that we try to basically do everything for software development and delivery. And I want to talk a little bit as someone who was an engineer for half a decade about how this usually works. So when you are a software developer, one of the things that you want to do is you want to automate as much of your workflow as possible. But what happens with most people is that they'll have one tool for holding their code. They'll have another tool for keeping track of work. Then they'll have another cool tool for like this thing called CICD. You might have many different tools for security scanning. So let's just say like SonarQube. And then you have to save your software somewhere. So you might get another tool for that, something called like Nexus, right? And then so if you want to create an automation, if you want to automate your workflow for something like this, you can almost think about like a big conveyor belt. Like, have you ever been in a brewery with like a really big conveyor belt, like Coors Brewery?
Mhm.
Like one of let's try to get a good picture of this. Yeah, anyone ever see something like being in a factory like this?
Yep.
All right, so that's basically what most people are trying to do with their software. The thing is that because you have one vendor that builds this part, another vendor that builds this part, a third vendor that builds this part, you have to basically put everything together on your own. So this is our big conveyor belt for software development and delivery. We have to basically get all the tools to work together. And the challenge with this is that it's 5 tools to maintain, 5 tools to install, upgrade, 5 tools to train all of our employees on, and 5 tools to stitch together. So the more tools that you have, let's just say that we have to update Jira, right? So we have to turn these computers off and turn them back on. If we have to have downtime for Jira, then as the conveyor is going, then do you think the entire automation pipeline works, or does it kind of just like stop here?
Jam out, probably.
Yep.
Exactly,
Freezes
right?
workflow.
So if in this example, I only mentioned 5 tools, but most people usually have like 10, 15. So now that's 10 to 15 platforms that need to go down from time to time. So how do you think that affects your workflow if there's more and more tools in this environment?
You just have a wider chance to break. You have more things that could go down and go wrong. So
Exactly. Yeah. So real example is maybe 10 to 15 tools that are involved. 10 to 15 tools to train your employees on, 10 to 15 sales teams to talk to, right? They're all trying to upsell you. That's kind of annoying too. 5 to 10 to 15 tools to install, upgrade, monitor, integrate together. And ultimately, what would be much better is if one vendor built out this entire thing for you. It was always designed to work together, and you have like a maintenance contract by one vendor as opposed to like 15 different vendors, right? So we want to be the universal system for software development and delivery. And so what do we try to do? Basically everything. The other thing that I want to talk about is that this is very, very, very countercultural in technology. Basically, right now, engineers are actually rewarded for going out and finding some cool new thing to put in here. And literally, that's part of, sometimes you can just show leadership by finding new technologies to implement into your software delivery lifecycle. So what we are proposing from going from 10 to 15 tools into one is very, very, very countercultural. Most people don't understand the value of doing this. This is something that we have to explain to the people that we talk to. All right, so the other thing that I want to talk about is we're not fully there yet. So this is the whole list of everything that we're trying to do. You could literally have a $2 billion company that focuses on this one thing. And we are trying to do basically everything here. But this is a chart that shows how good we are at each of these product categories. The heart means that we're great at it. We think that we're one of the best 3 solutions in the entire world at this place. The circle means that we're decent at it, right? We're good. We're one of the best like 20 tools in the market. The half circle means that we're okay at it. We're still working on it. There's better stuff than where we're at. And the quarter circle basically means that like you probably really, if you don't have anything, you might want to use our stuff, but it's not a real solution yet, right? So what is the most common shape that you see in this chart?
It's a lot of half circles.
Yeah.
As it evolves, they seem to get smaller.
Yeah.
Like, like the circle, like the quality of the addition seem to drop, as the company has evolved, but that partly is because of the, influx of features being added or capabilities.
We're super broad, and that means that some places of our product were very thin, right? You literally have a company that they have 100 engineers. They're spending all 100 engineers on these 2 things, right? And this is maybe just like 2% of where we're spending our engineering. And that's very important for us to understand. So one of the things I want to talk about is that as we complete our product vision, then our ability to go into any customer meeting and say, we genuinely replace this entire conveyor belt, the value prop is just going to increase as we build out the product, right? And some places right now we're mature, but in some places like this one, we're just getting started, right? This is not like mature in any capacity whatsoever. Over here is an example of our very ambitious roadmap. So some companies are really great at sales. Some companies are really great at engineering. GitLab is very, very good at engineering and product. And you can see that this is the roadmap that we want to achieve in the next year. Right now we have 3 hearts. We have 7 full circles and literally 34 of these half circles and 26 of these quarter circles, right? So like only 80%, only 20% of our product really is complete in any capacity. But let's scroll 1 year out into the future now. 1 year into the future, we want to be 50% whole circle our heart. And at that point in time, it's going to be a lot easier for us to sell GitLab because of how we've completed this product vision, okay? So very important for us to understand is that we're not there yet, but we're getting there quickly. We have a really great engineering focus and culture at our company. This is basically a list of all of the awesome stuff we've added in every single year. So 2011, we added 2 things, then 3, 3, 3, 4, 6, 9, 12, 15, 20, right? So we're basically ballooning. And this is because of just the fact that we have a great engineering culture and the fact that our roadmap is going to be affected by our IPO, right? So using the money from the IPO, we're going to use it to improve our product.
A quick question.
Yeah.
How do we define what we think is like a complete version of our product, or like a work in progress, or minimal? What's our criteria for that? Is it just kind of how we feel about it compared to other options? Is there like an actual like data that we use?
Yeah. I'm not going to make up an answer for you for this. I think my understanding of this is that this comes from our product team. And what I would say about this is that I think it's a very brave thing to tell your customers that we're not good at this yet, right? That's not what most people would say. So I do think that we are being transparent about it. I don't know. I kind of doubt that we spend all the effort to like go poll customers to talk about like where we are in the market with this stuff, just because I think that would take a lot of time.
It fits the overall idea of, I think, the product too, though, kind of the open source, ever evolving, where you just upfront tell these people like, hey, what you have now is great. Some things we're going to work on, but in the future, you're already going to have GitLab. And when these things are up to speed and fully operational, you're all set. Like you have it. Like it's pretty
That's
good.
Exactly it. So we're very excited about this next year. As our product gets completed, it's basically going to be a lot easier for us to sell the product. And it's pretty easy to sell our product right now too, to be quite honest. I know a lot of salespeople that say that GitLab's the easiest thing that they've ever sold. So that's important to understand. Okay, so it's all in one. We talked a little bit about this already, When I was an engineer, we used GitHub, Docker Hub, Jenkins. We also used Ansible and some Terraform. And then we basically want to replace all of that stuff and to be this conveyor belt, right? So GitLab would replace all of this and be your one's system. So this would be GitLab. Right now, because we're not done yet, you can use GitLab for maybe like these three, but you're going to still use some of these other vendors as well, because we're not mature in some of these other categories. But as our product gets completed, we can be the entire conveyor belt, which is pretty exciting.
Would you say terms like tool fatigue or like portal fatigue would apply to DevOps, right?
No.
Having to transfer stuff, or is it more like they don't really care about that?
It's not something that's super visible for people
Yeah.
because, in all honesty, like, yeah, I don't think like engineers are excited to learn new technology a lot of the time. So it's like, it's kind of
Perfect.
weird in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was
It's-
thinking when I would speak to, like, I hate to say it, like upper level directors or like CEOs that don't really use the tools for cybersecurity. They just want to know that if they get a report or they look at something, it's all under one app. So to them, it's like, I'm dumb, but I need to know it works. Where, like you said, engineers actually kind of care and find it interesting. So
Yeah.
not use that verbiage. Got it.
Yeah. I would use that verbiage maybe with leadership, but I would not on like the IC level.
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. How often do you guys go out, to your friends or somewhere without your phone?
It's like doesn't happen anymore. I like
Why?
Addicted to it, probably.
I mean, there's always there's always a reason I can justify, in case something's wrong with my kids or something, but like, it just, there's always a justification we come up with to keep our phones.
Yeah.
We just,
And part of it is just maybe it's because it became a universal tool, right?
yep.
Mm.
We basically want to be that universal tool for software development and delivery. And as we basically complete our product roadmap, we can more authentically do this. So it's almost like your phone is what you do for email, but also it's your GPS. It's also how you communicate with other people. You check the weather, stuff like that. And that's what we're trying to do, right? So as we build out our app more, we want to become basically the iPhone for software developers. All right, okay. So can I help clarify anything, or I'll talk about why people buy GitLab?
Good right
I
now.
think it's pretty straightforward so far.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So let's talk about some of our fundamental business value drivers. This is really important for us to understand. And we basically did an analysis and we came up with 3 that were most important for people, right? So on the executive level, these are the 3 that would really make a difference for them. And number 1 is that we'll make your engineering more efficient. With GitLab, you can get more out of your engineering department. Number 2 is, we know you have tight deadlines. We will help you to deliver your better products faster, right? So all those apps you're developing, the projects that you have, we will help you to make better output faster with GitLab. Number 3 is that we help to reduce security and compliance risk. So this is really great because our total addressable market is basically everyone in software development, right? Any company with software people, then they have room for GitLab. We can help them. So how do we do some of this stuff? We'll talk about it, but I want to talk about some caveats first. We already talked about one is the fact that this is countercultural, right? Having a single application that does a lot of this stuff is not how people naturally think. And a lot of these engineers are actually rewarded for going out and finding this new cool tool, right? That's a very common thing. The other thing that's kind of something that we have to deal with is the fact that a lot of people are invested in their current tools. So let's just say that here's a customer, it's on the top, and they spent 3 years getting this setup working really well. They've had Jenkins for 5 years. they've spent literally 1,000 hours updating, maintaining, and building stuff out for Jenkins. So to get them to go migrate to something else and to rip out some of this stuff, there's like almost an emotional component with like, I've worked on this platform. This is my blood, sweat, and tears, right? So that also is a little bit something that we come up against. The other thing that we want to talk about is, have you ever like bought like a combo meal from Wendy's and not wanted to drink?
Oh yeah.
Do you feel like you're
Absolutely.
wasting money? You know?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yes, like one way or another. Yeah, it's like it's ridiculous because you're like, I'll just get the
Yeah.
meal. Yeah.
So a lot of times people get GitLab, only use it for this part of our product, and they almost feel like they're paying for too much because they're not using all this other stuff, right? So if they already have a 2-year contract with something for monitoring their applications and they have a 1-year contract already for the security stuff, then GitLab is almost like the combo where you're not using the drink, you don't want the fries, but you still got to pay for it because you get the entire app, right? We don't give you the ability to get part of the app. So that's something that we do come up against is some people already are locked in for part of this conveyor belt. And the last thing that we want to talk about is the vast majority of people, they've heard of GitLab and they have a fundamental misunderstanding about what we do. So out of all of this awesome stuff that we do, they think that we either do 10 to 20% of this. They don't realize that we are a platform for an entirety of software development and delivery, right? And so one of the big fundamental motions that we have while talking to customers is, hey, did you know that GitLab is a single platform for software development? This means that we can actually replace all of your stuff. They just think that we're a platform that you can store your code, basically. Cool. Can I help clarify anything on this slide?
I think I'm good.
Yeah, good too. No, it makes sense. I actually really like that analogy though about like, if you're hungry or you need it, you're still gonna buy it, even if, for that moment or whatever the need is, you're still gonna buy the meal, even if you just dump the soda out or vice versa. So it's a very good way to put it.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Another caveat that I have is sometimes you're selling a tool that it's in a new space. So it's not really about getting people to switch to your product. It's about convincing them that they need something that's new. And sometimes you're selling into an established space where there's basically lots and lots of options, right? So one of the things to really understand about us is that there are definitely established players in our space. Probably around 70 to 80% of all of your calls are going to have some competitive element to them. So this is really important. And knowing how to navigate these conversations is really important, which is why we have one session completely dedicated to this. All right. Cool. So next thing I want to talk about is we have 3 pricing plans. Someone give me an observation about some of our pricing options. There's 2 main ones that I'm looking for here.
Yeah, there seems to be a big jump between premium and ultimate.
I mean, that's the biggest one as I see.
Yeah.
I mean, really is that massive jump in price per month. So
yeah, it's 5 times.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, right? If you go to a restaurant, let's just say you go to a Thai restaurant in your city, how much would like a pad Thai be?
Well, I mean, living where I live, it's depending on the restaurant, could be anywhere between 11 if you go cheap to like I've seen like $25.
Okay. So let me give you another question. Typical restaurant, what the cheapest entree item to the most expensive entree item? What do you think? Maybe 2x, 3x for average restaurant?
Probably. It's pretty safe. Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
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 But over here, we're literally 5x between pricing tiers. So that's something that definitely stands out. Okay, looking for one more observation about our pricing tiers.
So it looks like the free one still has all stages of the life cycle. So I guess it'd be about convincing people to pay the premium or ultimate price.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for, is that we have a free tier. And so one of the also fundamental motions that we have here is, hey, you're using GitLab free. That's awesome. Did you know about all this cool stuff in premium? Would love to chat with you to see how we can go help you out with get more out of GitLab, right? One thing that's sort of understand is a lot of the people who used a free tier, we don't even know who they are. Because to go out and download GitLab, you can just go out and download it. So we have people that are using GitLab all around the world and we don't even know who they are. Sometimes we do, but a lot of times we don't even know who they are, which is also interesting too. All right, thank you. All right, can someone give me an explanation between SaaS and self-hosted?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, John. I think we covered it too briefly.
Yeah. Self-hosted is just having it on your own servers and essentially having your internal employees use it that way, or SaaS is by using like GitLab's website.
Exactly. So let me sort of talk about that real quick. If you want access to gitlab.com, you just want to log in here, you want your team members to be able to sign in and use the platform, then that's the SaaS offering. In this example, the servers that are actually running this, we pick Google Cloud as our platform. So that's important for us to understand. Every once in a while, a customer is going to ask, okay, where are the servers that are running Google or like our SaaS offering? And the answer is it's Google Cloud in the United States. And then the other thing is sometimes you have customers that they want to install GitLab on their own hardware. So let's just say it's a top secret project, right? And so they're going to go install GitLab on their own computer in their own private data center. So that's what this picture is. It's not the best picture. All right. So one thing to understand that customers ask us all the time is the pricing is the same between SaaS and self-hosted. So you actually save money with SaaS because you don't have to spend your own computers on the SaaS. Right? If you had self-hosted, you also need to go buy some computers to install our stuff on. But with the SaaS, GitLab is going to maintain and do all that stuff for you. So it's actually a cost driver for people to get the SaaS. Can I help with that, or does that make sense?
No, that's a great approach. Like you said, kind of a TCO type thing, or just like you said, like a cost driver. Like,
yeah. Okay, awesome. And the other thing I want to talk about is that we right now, from a revenue perspective, we get around 55% of our revenue from self-hosted. So we get more money from self-hosted than we do from SaaS. And in this, if your customer needs self-hosted, we are pretty much the best provider in the market at this. We are the best at being a self-hosted, like software delivery, like lifecycle platform. So we have around 79% market share. Our main competitor, GitHub, is primarily a SaaS. They're not very good at self-hosted.
What is the reason we're so much better? Is it have to do with like compatibility issues or what?
GitHub was not architected really in a way to scale out very well. So if you get like 20,000, 30,000 employees on the platform, it gets really slow. Versus with GitLab, you don't really have as much of a problem with that. We scale out better from a speed performance perspective.
Got it.
All right. Cool. Okay, so talking a little bit about the value drivers that we bring, how do we make people more efficient and help them deliver better products faster? Part of this is that we help them to implement best practices, right? So this is stuff that everyone wants, everyone knows about, but it's almost like a sports team. Everyone knows we need to have great communication, we need to play good defense, but the secret isn't what the best practice is. The secret is how do you actually get there, right? And just like that, people in software development today, they want what they call agile workflows. They want this stuff called CICD. If you have mature agile and CICD workflows, you're much more efficient than your competitors. So it's not like 20, 30% more efficient. We're talking about like 100, 200% more efficient, right? So it's a huge value driver for these businesses. And one of the things that we do is that we make it very easy for people to get this. So let's talk about Agile real quick. So software development is something that is new in the sense that it's only really existed for 30 years. And because it is newer, it takes time for people to figure out how to manage this process, right? And how to come up with these best practices. So the first way in which people really develop software is this method called waterfall. In waterfall, it's basically me as a buyer, I go over and I say, I want a website. I want it to do A, B, and C. Here's some pictures, here's design spec. I want customer reviews and I want this other stuff. Give me my website, right? And then I leave and I come back 6 months later and then I pay them $30,000 and then I get my website. And the problem with that is that because there's no ongoing dialogue and communication, then sometimes there are big misunderstandings that happen because maybe someone misinterpreted something or there was maybe something that was missing in the design document. Let me give you another example of this. Let's just say that, like, using housing as an analogy. So let's just say that I am a builder, right? Customer goes to me and says, I want this house, 4 bedrooms, 2 bath. Here's the design document. I go out and I build this house. There's no communication. What's going to end up happening is either A, I'm going to make a mistake. B, part of the design doc is missing. 3, the buyer actually doesn't know what they want. And then after it's getting built, they realize that they wanted something different, right? That happens all the time. And then so there might be situations in which the customer says, oh, wait, like I didn't realize that what I was putting down, what it's going to look like this. Can you go modify this room, right? The problem is that if the builder comes back when the house is already built, if you want to go make a change on the first floor, you might have to rip off the entire second floor, right? If you have a problem in the foundation, you might have to rip out the entire house. So Agile is a different approach for projects. And the whole idea is, let's go lay the foundation. Let's bring the buyer back and inspect it. If there's a problem, let's go fix the foundation before we build all this other stuff on top of it, right? So the total cost for a revision is much cheaper in this example. So after they like the foundation, then we'll put up the scaffolding. If they like this, great. If they don't, we'll modify it before we put more stuff in. And then we keep on doing this, then put in the electricity, put in the plumbing, put up the walls, put in the roof, and then finally we're done. So it's basically what we call an iterative approach to work. And because we're constantly revising and iterating, we can actually do work faster. Can I help clarify Agile, or are you all trucking with this example?
Makes sense.
Yep, makes sense.
Awesome. And so basically how modern software projects work is there's these thing called sprints. Our project is going to be sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4. And then sprint 1 will be the foundation. Sprint 2 will be the scaffolding. Sprint 3 will be like the electricity. Sprint 4 will be like the drywall or something like that. And so that's how an agile modern workflow works, is that there are sprints. And the value add that GitLab has is that it's very easy to do agile in GitLab. Okay, so best practice number 2 is this stuff called CICD. And the way to sort of think about this is that this is automation that speeds up your software development and delivery. And I want to show you an example of this. Here's the GitLab platform. Right now, you can see this is all source code for the GitLab application itself. And over here, I have all of these developers that are trying to get new code submitted into the platform. So we can't just accept anyone's code. There has to be a democratic process for getting the code in. or else our competitors could come in and just trash our code, right? There has to be a peer review process for what gets into our code base. Otherwise, it's just unmanageable. So over here, all these developers are trying to submit a code. And what they're doing is they are saying, here's my request to change the code or merge code. I have to explain what I did. So what did I do? Well, I added in this green code. I took out this red code. I'm basically just writing more code and I'm trying to get it in the platform. So people have the right to challenge me in what I did. And that's what people are doing. So people are saying like, I love this contribution, but have you considered this? I like what you did with this line of code, but have you thought about how this changes how we invoke the database, right? So this is a collaborative process and people have the ability to challenge the developer. But let's talk about CICD. So what CICD is that every time someone submits new code in the platform, then we have all this automation that's kicked off and runs. So let me give you an example of some of this automation. So over here, you can see that there is 127,000 software tests that were run. We're scanning for security vulnerabilities. So that's awesome that you wrote this new code. Is this secure, right? Let me give you real-time feedback on the security of the code that you're writing. We're also talking about things like code quality. We'll talk more about that later. But the long story short is that this could take 2 minutes. This could take 5 minutes. This could take 3 minutes. This takes 1 hour. This takes, okay, well, how many of this stuff is there? There's 7 here, 3 here under the test section. Let's see, there's 40 of these steps here. So this literally could take like 12 hours to run. And this is 12 hours that you don't have to contract out to another team. A lot of times this is a huge efficiency driver, all of this automation, right? And it ultimately is speeding up a lot of like the nitty gritty that people have to do in their day-to-day role. And I used to do a lot of this stuff by hand when I was an engineer. So I like, just take my word for it. This is a huge efficiency driver.
Is that something that's what these CICD capabilities, is that something that is pre-built into GitLab when you purchase it, or does the team choose which functions they want to be under that like scope?
This is configurable. So
It is
if you don't
configurable.
want, yeah. So like if you're a software development team that's making stuff for Tesla, this is going to be different than one that's making stuff for like the iPhone.
Cool. But it's all configurable. So the team, whoever who's using it can make it fit their needs. Cool.
Exactly. We're very flexible. So if you have some special thing, we can still automate your stuff.
Cool.
All right. So the last thing that I want to talk about is that I had a conversation with a vice president at Red Hat, which was the last place that I worked. And he was this vice president that was in charge of engineering. And I asked him, I'm not going to mention his name, but like I asked him, what is one of the things that you see at your level that is one of the biggest problems for engineering organizations? Like you've been a VP at HP, you've been a VP at this other company, you've literally been at 3 publicly traded companies, right? So what's the biggest problem with engineering groups today? And he basically paused a little bit and then he said, you know what, Chris, one of the big things that I actually see at my level is that teams don't communicate with each other. And because of this, literally one group is doing what another group has done 2 months ago over and over again. And he basically said more like this problem gets way worse if you're globally distributed. So if you have a team in Poland, another team in the UK, Austin, Texas, Portland, and India, then literally you could be spending like 20, 30% of all of your engineering time wasted because of all this duplication. And also for me as an engineer, I would estimate that maybe 20 to 30% of all of my work ended up not being used because people didn't communicate with each other. So someone else changed this thing. And then so my work is now not useful anymore. And they might not even have known that like what they were doing, the full implications of some other change that they made. So what I really want to talk about is the more tools that you have, part of this is a geographic problem, right? So if you have globally distributed teams, that's a problem. But another part of this is that if all of your developers are using GitHub and your DevOps people are using Jenkins, and then your security people, only they have access to SonarQube and some of these other things, then the big problem is my DevOps people now don't have visibility into what some of the things that the security teams are doing, right? It's almost, imagine if you had one organization, part of them were on Slack, part of them were on Microsoft Teams, and part of them use Google Chat, right? So tooling is also part of the problem as to why there are these like duplication of work and communication problems. The fact of the matter is, if you have more tools, you have less communication. So one of the things that we see over and over again, this literally happened all the time in my career, is that because the teams didn't communicate with each other, you'd have a situation like this. Team A is building a ramp. Team B doesn't realize that the ramp is going to be so high. Team C doesn't realize it's a bridge. This literally happened all the time in my career. So one of the efficiency drivers that we have is that we are one shared table. And what this means is that by being a single platform that your developers, your operations people, your security people, literally everyone can be on the same platform, this is going to enhance inter-team collaboration across your entire business. And it's going to reduce the amount of time wasted because of duplication. And also, you're going to get better collaboration. So what I mean by that is, over here is the code change that we looked at earlier. There's a guy named Kyle Edwards. He is trying to submit his code change, but you're going to have higher quality code being written simply because you're not just going to have the developer feedback. You could also have feedback from operations and from the test team and from the security team, because you have better inter-team collaboration on the GitLab platform. This is going to allow you to have better products across the board. Right? When you bring all the stakeholders together, you're going to have just better output. So that's what we mean by GitLab being one shared table. It's not just going to be the developers on GitHub, the DevOps people on Jenkins, and the one test person. I used to be a test engineer, so the test engineer on the test platform. When you have everyone using the same tooling, you can have better ideas, right? Cool. Okay. Let me talk about reducing security and compliance risk. This is something that's really, really, really important. And we already talked a little bit about this. One of the things that's really important for us to understand is that we are changing how software development is working for our customers. Most people, they test for security all the way at the end of their automation pipeline. So you remember that conveyor belt analogy. Most people, security testing is either forgotten about, or if they're haven't forgotten about it, they usually test software right before they're about to release software to the public. And the big problem with that is that that's almost like you already built the house. You're testing for security when the house is already built, right? And then so if the security team comes back and finds a problem with some fundamental part of your app, you might have to go rip out a large part of your app. So to sort of rephrase this, security is often forgotten about. If it's not forgotten about, it's tested at the end. That's like testing your house after it's already built. If you find a problem with the foundation in the house, you might have to rip out a big chunk of the house, right? And so what we actually do that changes the game for these customers is that when our CICD runs, it runs testing for security as these developers are writing new code. So we're actually giving them real-time feedback as to the security of the code that they're writing. This means that once they build the foundation, we'll test it. Once they put in the wood planks, they'll test it. Once they put in electricity, they'll test it, right? And then so we actually prevent the situation, help to prevent the situation where someone builds an entire house and they find something foundationally wrong with it from a security perspective. Can I help clarify the security point, or is it clear for y'all?
No, that I think is huge.
Yeah,
Because it's going to run parallel with the life cycle of the development. So if there is any issues, they'll know at the right time instead of pushing it out with flawed code, and i.e. Microsoft's vulnerabilities over the last year. Microsoft Exchange servers just getting annihilated.
Yeah.
no,
do
that's-
y'all have a hard stop in 3 minutes, or do y'all have a time to go a couple minutes over?
I can go a few minutes over. I may just have to just unlock my front door just to,
Okay.
let the ruffians in, but Lynn.
I'm good. I don't have anything for the next like 30 minutes. So
Okay. Great. So that's awesome. We just talked about the business drivers. We're going to be talking with technical people all the time, and then we have to understand from a product perspective, what is some of the technical stuff that we do, right? So let's actually go over that right now. So one of the main use cases that we have from a technical perspective is that we have this thing called version control. And really what this is that it's a platform that stores your code. And the reason why this is important is because if you have like a lot of people working on the same coding project, you basically need to have a single source of truth on the current status of your software project. And then so that is what version control gives you, among other things. So even though we have maybe, let's just say 1,000 contributors from 60 different countries, all collaborating on this project, this is the single source of truth about what the code is that makes up GitLab today. And I can see all of this code right here. It's all public. This is just literally the code that makes up GitLab. The reason why it's called version control is that we give you really powerful capabilities that help you to manage this entire large group of files, right? So I'll give you an example. In this history view, let's just say that our customers start complaining about something bad happening in our app, and it happened about 2 hours ago, right? What ended up happening was that the login screen's kind of messed up for some people. So they reported it about 2 hours ago. Let's see some of these changes. Okay, so this one went through, this one went through, this one went through 2 hours ago. This doesn't have to do with the login screen. This also, this doesn't have to do with the login screen. This one, as an example, let's just say this is the one that has to do with the login screen. What I can do now is I can go undo this change, and my app is going to go back to normal. And then now I can fix my customer issue really quickly. So that is why version control is really important. So it's giving me the ability to snap back in time and to see the historical progress of my code as we're developing it and changing it over time. So technical use case number one, version control are this thing called SCM, or source control management. All right, so use case number two, this thing called continuous integration or deployment, what we mean by CICD. And really what this is that this is automation that's speeding up our software development and delivery. And just to sort of recap, an open source project means that anyone can contribute, but that doesn't mean that we just accept contributions from anyone. There's a process for getting something into our project. And if we don't like your contribution, we're not going to accept it, okay? So there's this thing called a merge request. What a merge request is that it's a request to get code merged into our database, basically. So here's all of the merge requests that are coming in. Some of these are GitLab team members, but some of these are people that we don't even know, right? Because it's an open source project. So over here is an example of one of these merge requests. Developers adding in this green code, taking out the red code. The CICD is all of this automation that's running parallel to that. Every single time someone adds in some new code, we're checking it for all sorts of powerful things, making sure that it's fast, that it's efficient, that it's high quality, that it works, that it's secure. And we do this in an automated fashion. So this is a really powerful efficiency driver. All right, so next thing I want to talk about is this thing called DevSecops. So the thing to sort of understand is that the vast majority of people test for security right before they're about to release software into the wild. And then so the big problem with that is that it's just sort of to recap, it's the house analogy, right? So you're literally going to go check this house for something right before you're going to give it to the buyer. Well, the problem with that is that if there's some structural issue or some sort of issue with tubing or electricity, then you might have to rip out a huge chunk of the house. How we change the game is that every single time someone is writing new code, we're testing for security. That's all of this stuff here. So all of these vulnerabilities, hackers, bad things that we need to fix, we're going to give the developers real-time feedback in terms of the stuff they're adding in. Okay, last use case is something called Agile project management. And what Agile project management is, let's just say that you have a globally distributed team. You got 3 people in Poland, you got 2 in London, you got 3 in Portland, and you got 2 in India, right? So it's one team. That means that because they really can't collaborate, like there's different time zones, you basically need some sort of process management system for you to find out the current status of work on your team. So what we actually have is we have public, this is like a big to-do list. So this is like one item of stuff to do. Then this is another like work item. This is another work item for engineers. And then so because we have a globally distributed team, if we're keeping this up to date, then we know what my colleague in India, what my colleague in Portland, what they did when I was asleep, right? So that's why it's really important for us to use something like a project management tool for us to stay on the same page. Things that this shows us is I know who's working on what. So this work item is being done by Eric. This work item is being done by Miranda. I know the current status of this. So right now we think this is definitely deliverable. We think this might get pushed out because it's too ambitious. And we can collaborate on what's happening here too, right? So people can basically give ideas in terms of this to-do list. Someone can say, I already did this. I solved this 2 months ago because I did this. You should take a look here, right? And so this can be a great driver for efficiency for an organization as well. Cool. All right, so summarizing everything, one of the ways in which we can talk about GitLab, because it is so complicated, is that we are a DevOps platform. We're not a single point tool, but we are a platform for doing lots of different things. And the business value that we have is that we allow for fast, efficient, and secure software development delivery. So that's one example of an elevator pitch. I'll give you all a couple more later too.